everyone. Welcome to today's Tech Talk, and thank you for joining us. Today, we're talking about monitoring productivity of industrial operations with AWS IoT SiteWise. My name is Saras Kaul, and I'm a Senior Product Manager in AWS IoT. With me today, I have Perry Subramanya from Bayer Crop Sciences to share their journey with SiteWise. In today's agenda, we'll cover an intermediate level overview of IoT SiteWise, which is a new IoT service that was launched in general availability last week. I'll then hand it off to Perry to talk to you about what Bayer Crop Science has been up to, show you a demo of the site monitoring application that they have built using SiteWise, and share a bit about what's coming next for them. So to start off, at AWS IoT, we always start with a statement. If we knew the state of everything and could reason on top of that data, what problems would you solve? This statement is like a guiding principle for us at IoT, and it's a constant reminder for us to be hyper-focused about problems that our customers want to solve and how we as AWS IoT can help our customers solve these problems. And we're excited to share the story of one such customer today. Before we get started, I'll briefly cover the three fundamentals of AWS IoT. Starting from device software, AWS IoT offers solutions for IoT devices and assets to run on the edge and connect to the cloud. Then, of course, you need cloud services to connect these devices at scale and manage them and keep them secure. And finally, we come to the data. This is the data that these devices generate. So you want to be able to analyze this data so you can make sense of it and take actions to improve your operations. Now, these three fundamentals of IoT, we like to think about it as more of a virtuous cycle. In today's session, we'll focus on one of our newly launched IoT analytics services called AWS IoT SiteWise. When we started building this service, we talked to a lot of customers and we realized that they all had a common challenge. They were unable to utilize the data from their factories and plants to drive operational efficiencies. And oftentimes they were unable to even access the data that was being collected. So we saw this as a challenge across our customers, across very many industry verticals, and we decided to focus on helping our customers make things smartly. So we built IoT SiteWise, which is a service that lets you easily collect, organize, and analyze data from industrial equipment at scale. You can use SiteWise to monitor operations across your facilities, automatically compute common industrial performance metrics, for example, overall equipment effectiveness, or the OEE metric, which is a common one, which Perry will get into in a little while. And finally, SiteWise lets you create applications that you can arm your operational personnel with so they can monitor and track your operational performance and help prevent equipment issues and reduce gaps in productions, improving your overall throughput for your production environments. With SiteWise, we try to help our customers across the entire workflow, starting from ingesting data from equipment on the shop floors, bringing that data to the cloud where you can create virtual models of your shop floor so they mimic your actual physical environments. With this data, you can compute metrics that help you track your operational efficiencies or any other KPIs that are relevant for your production environments. Store this data in a performance scalable data store and monitor this using web applications and dashboards so you have very quick visibility into what is actually going on in the shop floor. And then finally, there are extensibility options available for you to create your own applications. Now, I would like to get into some details for each of the pillars that we talked about, starting with ingesting data. SiteWise offers a few different ways for you to ingest data to the cloud. Starting with the OPC UA path. OPC UA is a common industrial protocol. It's typically used in historian or aggregation servers that sit on the plant floor. So with SiteWise, you can deploy a gateway, which is a SiteWise connector on any third-party device running on AWS IoT Greengrass. This connector connects to your OPC UA servers and pulls data up into the cloud. Now, with the gateway software, it's easy for you to configure and remotely manage them. You can filter the data that is being stored in your OPC UA server, so you only upload the data that matters to you and is more mission critical for you to be tracking. So you can be more granular about what data is uploaded to the cloud and stored in the cloud. You also have the option for ingesting data from more modern devices that talk MQTT protocol. So you can connect these devices to AWS IoT Core and then specify specific rules that can route that MQTT data to IoT SiteWise as well. And finally, we have the AWS SDK, which gives you programmatic access to the service as well. So you can use our APIs through your applications to send data directly to AWS IoT SiteWise as well. Now, once this data is coming into the cloud, you want to map that to the virtual models of your shop floors that you will create. So in order to help customers easily create these models, we have a cloud modeling capability present in SiteWise. For the purpose of this webinar, I'll walk through a wind farm example to see how we can create these virtual models. So when you start off creating models, you first start with thinking about what are the relevant data points for this particular equipment. So you create a more generalized model of a wind turbine in this example, where you specify static descriptions or attributes such as make, model, and location that help you identify the wind turbine in question. You can specify measurements that are reading the raw data, the raw telemetry data, which is expressed as a time quality value tuple, and have that flow into your model as well. In this case, we're for example, reporting on the RPM, the torque, the wind direction, and the wind speed. You can use transforms, which allow you to translate measurements from one form to the other. You can think of it as, if you want to do any unit conversions, say from degree Celsius to degree Fahrenheit for temperature, or if you want to convert your RPM to RPS, because that's what you want to use in computation of your metrics. So you can use transforms to do that, and every incoming data point for that measurement are then converted using the transform formula and then stored back in the database. And then finally, you can use metrics for more complex computations. We have a built-in library of functions and operators that you can use to author these metrics. And you can specify what is the time interval that you want these metrics to be computed. So for example, using the torque and RPS values coming in from the measurements and transforms, you can compute the average power of a wind turbine. And all you have to do is specify the formula that goes into computing the average power. And with every data point coming in, depending on the time window that you've selected, SiteWise will automatically compute these metrics for you and store them in the database. Now you can create hierarchies, so you can define relationships between different kinds of assets. So for example, if you had a fleet of wind turbines, say you had a fleet of 4 wind turbines that together form a wind farm, you can make that association through the model hierarchies. So in this case, the wind turbine would be the child asset of the wind farm. The benefit of creating these model hierarchies is that you are able to use the metrics computed for the child asset and report on them at the parent level. So for example, if you have the average power of each wind turbine being computed as part of a metric, you can use that metric in the parent asset, which is the wind farm, to compute the total average power of your entire fleet of wind turbines. So it just makes easy for you to roll up the metrics and see at a higher level how your equipment and your processes are performing. It gives you a higher level visibility into the wind farm, but then you also have the option to drill down into individual pieces of equipment that are rolling up into the wind farm. Now, once you've created the model, this is a generic template for how a wind turbine or a wind farm should look, and what are the different data points that you would want to collect as part of that equipment. The next step here would be for you to create actual instances from that model. Now, these instances or assets have a one-to-one mapping with your actual physical equipment. So if we think about the wind farm, from the wind farm model, I have created a specific wind farm, which is my Portland wind farm. And from my wind turbine model, I have created 4 individual assets, which is wind turbine 1 through 4, which make up this Portland wind farm. So these instances or assets allow you to take the template that you've created, apply it to actual physical equipment, and start reporting on and monitoring those equipment. The next step here would be to link the data that is being collected at the edge to the assets that you've created in SiteWise. One way to do that is through, as I mentioned, the OPC UA path. So if you have your PLCs sending data to a local server, you can use the SiteWise connector at the edge to read data from that server. And the data comes in forms of OPC UA tags in this path, in this case. And you can map those OPC UA tags to individual measurements in the assets that you've created. So for example, you can see the hierarchy of the tag path going from wind farm 1 for the turbine number 1, we're monitoring the torque K&M, which is being stored in your local server. The gateway reads that tag and maps it to the measurement, which is the torque K&M measurement for the wind turbine asset in Portland. Now, all of this data that is collected from the edge, from your shop floors, and all the transforms and metrics that you have configured to be computed on top of that telemetry data, all of that data is stored in a built-in time series database. We built this time series database in such a way that it's optimized for time series data, allowing you low latency access to your equipment data and all its computed metrics. This database is scalable, it's performant, it's fully managed, so you don't have to spend any time thinking about how much capacity would I need to store my data, or think about provisioning any sort of storage for it. The database scales up and down automatically based on your usage. Now, once the data is stored in the service, we have to think about how you can utilize this data. So if you're thinking about creating custom apps based on the data collected in SiteWise and the data modeled in SiteWise, we offer 2 mechanisms for you to actually tap into that data. One is a publish subscribe interface that is the streaming path. You can enable a stream of updates to be sent to an MQTT topic. And you can do this very granularly. You can do this at an individual property level. So you can select, pick and choose, I only want these measurements, I only want these metrics to be sending data to the MQTT topic. And using IoT Core in the middle, you can subscribe to that topic and have it routed to any custom apps that you have built. So for those apps, you always get a near real-time stream of structured data coming in from your shop floors. Another mechanism for you to interact with the data is to use our set of query APIs. So these are a set of get APIs that you can request for the data, and SiteWise will send that data back to you depending on the query that the query mechanism that you've opted for. We offer 3 options today. One that allows you to get the most latest data for any property. 2 that lets you query historical values for that property. And then finally, a get aggregate API that allows you to get common aggregates automatically, such as average or sum, min, max, count, these kind of aggregates directly through our APIs. And now finally, we heard from a lot of customers that having this data available in the hands of the operator is what they're looking for. So these operators are armed with the right data and the right insights to make improvements in your shop floors and in your production processes. So for that, we've also added SiteWise Monitor, which is a feature of the service, which allows you to create fully managed web applications for visualizing and interacting with operational data from your devices and equipment. This is a built-in functionality in the service. You don't have to write any code to set up and deploy these web applications. And it's very easy for you to get set up and be prescriptive about what assets and what data would you want to create a dashboard out of. The SiteWise Monitor applications links to your corporate identity provider with a single sign-on experience. So people in your team and in your organization can get access to that data without having to log into the AWS console, for example. And the applications themselves, they let you automatically discover your assets, the hierarchy of your assets, and start monitoring data visually that is ingesting into AWS Cloud and into SiteWise. Here you see a quick video of how easy it is to set up a dashboard. It's simple drag and drop motions for you to get started, select the visualization you want, and publish the dashboard. So now you have not just real-time access into how your equipment's performing, but also you get historical access, so you can go back in time and see if you wanted to do some root cause analysis, or if you were just curious as to what was happening last week from Monday to Wednesday, for example. So the SiteWise Monitor application really arms your operational personnel to do their job more efficiently. Next, I'm going to hand it off to Perry. Perry is a principal engineer at Bayer Crop Sciences, and they've been using SiteWise through their harvest season through last year, and also they will be having another harvest this year. And he's going to walk you through how they have used SiteWise for their crop processing workflows. Over to you, Perry.
Thank you, Saras, for that introduction and a great overview of the SiteWise product. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm excited to be here presenting or talking to you about our journey at Crop Science and how we have leveraged or utilized the SiteWise product on our shop floor. So my name is Perry Subramanya, once again, and I'm a principal engineer at Crop Science. I just took on this role a few weeks ago, but before this, I was leading the IoT platform strategy implementation for IoT and industrial IoT products. And so, and in that journey or in that role, I came in touch with the SiteWise product team, and we talked about a partnership where As a customer, we would be able to utilize the product for our data collection and analytics. And in turn, we would also help shape up or build the product in partnership with Amazon. So that was a great opportunity for us. And here I am to talk about that journey. So what is OEE? As most of you may already know, it is overall equipment effectiveness. And it is a key sort of metric or a measure for productivity on the shop floor. So why is it important? I mean, and why do we need to measure this metric? Obviously, we are all striving towards reduced costs and high throughput, high productivity. And obviously, just like anything else, metrics or data-driven analytics is key. And in that, the overall visibility of the operations on the shop floor helps towards that goal of, let's say, achieving our effectiveness targets. Now, higher the number is more desirable, but at Crop Science, I mean, that 80% number, what is really 80%, right? The defining that is where the key is. And while we have these fragmented, let's say, or individual solutions on our shop floor for capturing data at different levels, having a, let's say, a streamlined system or a service in place where data can be collected, analyzed, shipped to the cloud for further reporting and dashboarding is where we saw the value or the need. And so I would like to talk a little bit about where we used SiteWise so that you guys have a perspective of the different equipments and the different operations and so that you can relate to when I talk about the different dashboards and screens, you can relate to how we are using it. Now, for those guys who are familiar with harvesting operations, this probably is familiar. But for those like myself, I wasn't, even though I was part of crop science for a long time. After, let's say, a year and a half ago, when I was introduced to the manufacturing side of things, and when we were trying to do the industrial IoT implementation, is when I started really getting deep into the overall shop floor operations. And it was pretty fascinating. So it starts from the field where we are harvesting corn. In this case, we are talking about the corn production plants. So it starts with the field where we harvest the corn. We load it on a truck, and it travels from the field to the facility. And the second step in this operation or the workflow is we receive the truck, we receive the seed, it gets on a conveyor belt. All these things are wired to the PLC. So at every given moment in time, as soon as a truck starts unloading the corn, it starts getting tracked, if you will. How much corn is being, let's say, unloaded on which belt, and where is it going, etc. So once it's received, it goes up to our husking and sorting, let's say, area where the corn is dehusked and it's sorted. And then it goes into shelling. The picture you see down here, it's a sheller where the kernels are being shelled from the cob, and it goes into bulk storage. And then from there on, it goes on to cleaning, sizing, and sorting. We apply treatments. As you know, it's a GMO crop or a GMO seed. And then the last step is packaging, warehousing, and logistics. So as you can see from the picture, it is pretty intense, pretty robust, pretty, let's say, involved operation. A lot of equipment at any given place in time, right? So having the overall visibility of what goes on in these areas, being able to measure the various metrics or KPIs would help essentially to drive in reduction of COGS or figuring out where do we need to improve and improvise, right? And hence the let's say the usage of SiteWise in our context. So having seen this picture and getting a little bit more information about the overall operation, let's talk about the drivers. And as I mentioned earlier on, it's about monitoring your operational throughput, the end-to-end visibility, being able to, let's say, play out what-if scenarios, which is pretty critical, right, in our manufacturing world, where we talk about Industry 4.0 concepts and we want to, let's say, close the loop, meaning it's not only one-way data collection, aggregation, and reporting, but also we ought to be able to, let's say, push the feedback to the PLC to either slow down the motor or slow down the belt if there's a choking point that has been foreseen by a model in a certain time frame. So all these things are the drivers in our manufacturing facilities, and how do we bring all these things together? But let's not forget about the cost aspect. I mean, Industry 4.0 concepts can be expensive, but if you can become creative, if you use the right tooling, if you are in the right ecosystem, then things can be more seamless and cost effective and scalable. So that's how we started. Again, it's not that we didn't have this before, but then being in IoT and in innovation space, we are constantly striving to try new technologies and new ways of getting data and more streamlined ways of getting data. So SiteWise had the promise. Like I said, I was involved from early on in the previous stage of SiteWise. So it had the promise of being pluggable. And it talks and talking to an OPC UA server. It had the ability to configure various tags, because on the shop floor we do collect, and if not hundreds or thousands of tags from the machineries. But for OEE perspective, we were only interested in a subset of those tags. So being able to configure those at the device level or the edge level was key also. Again, more importantly, being able to model your areas in the cloud just the way how it is set up on the shop floor in the physical virtual representation of your factory, so that your metrics can be rolled up, aggregated, reported in a robust manner, was also a key a feature that kind of appealed to us. And then just the pay-as-you-go or model or pay-as-you-use model, which would eliminate all the, let's say, licensing, support, and those heavy, typical, let's say, vendor system costs, right? And at Crop Science, we are a big AWS shop, so it made sense to, and we are familiar with other IoT products and services, so it made sense for us to go down this path and try this product. So you already saw some explanation from Saras, a little bit more technical about the asset modelings and the hierarchies and the various templates. Here, I have few screenshots to showcase, and I'm going to talk a little bit more in my demo and walk you through about how we have utilized SiteWise, the models and assets, and the dashboarding. So this is the asset model screen where you can see we have on the left side, you can see the corn site. So a model in a sense is a template, if you will, a template for the site as to what you can measure or what type of attributes you want to record for a site. Then you have a machine model, then we have a line model and an area model. So we try to model as it were in our shop floor in the cloud. So that's the modeling piece of SiteWise. And then the measurements, it was pretty straightforward. You can define, like I said, we were interested in only a subset of the measurements that we were collecting from the shop floor. An example would be an equipment state, a good counter, bad counter, the speed, variety and size of the seed, and the batch of the seed. And on the right side, what you see is a mapping on the OPC for each of those measurements. So in this case, the OPC and the PLC side, we had to program the tags, and we named it in a meaningful manner so that we can relate again. If you notice, KRY_OEE, the top one relates to a site, and TRT is a treater, line 2. So we also followed some conventions that made it easy to look at data and report on data. So this is the measurement aspect of SiteWise. Transforms, in our case, we use it for defining the downtime codes. What are downtime codes? So meaning whether your equipment is running, or is it being calibrated, or did we stop the machine or the line for some reason? So in each of those events, we programmed a code that gets sent to SiteWise. So the first one, 1001 code coming from the PLC means the equipment is running, right? And so on and so forth. We have about 120 of those codes defined. We wanted to get granular so that we can do deep analytics and deep understanding of where, what went wrong where, so that we can sort of improvise on them, right? So this is the downtime codes management. They have also a metrics or the KPI definition feature where you can define your metrics. So in our case, very high level, we had what is planned downtime, and it's made up of these individual granular state time functions. So state time function means if you ask SiteWise, hey, how long was this equipment in this generic state, the downtime code I talked about, a generic code, how long has this been sending that code, and then SiteWise goes and aggregates it and gives us a number. So overall, my metric is state time of generic plus safety plus training and so on and so forth. So this is very helpful, very intuitive, very, let's say, easy to author these things. You have the CLIs to do that. You can go in the console to do that. So we were able to do formula KPI definitions. We were able to define what measurements we were interested in, and we were able to model the SiteWise our factory floor. Now, how did we use it? At the time when it was being, let's say, in the preview mode, as any business, we have custom, let's say, requirements from our users. Canned dashboards is great when you are getting off the ground and up to speed. But for us, we were already mature. We had very specific requirements, and hence we went and built some quick dashboards utilizing the SiteWise API and the data that was being stored. So an area, and like I said, we will go into the demo in a second here, but just to give you guys a sneak peek of what this looks like. An area overview is what gets, let's say, displayed on the floor throughout, so that at any given point in time, people are aware of how the factory is doing. More granular reporting on the line at the line level. So what state, and this is the big buckets like we talked about, the breakdown. How long were you in the breakdown phase, or how long were you running in production, the full running state, and so on and so forth. And then much more granular detail to say each line has individual machines. So bagging line 1 or bagging line 2, and seed packaging, and so on and so forth. So again, these are very granular reporting. The 100 or so downtime codes I talked about is what is being displayed at this granular level. So because at the high level, you can see, oh, I was spending 30 minutes in breakdown, but what is that 30 minutes made of is what you see here. It could be starving, it could be changeover, it could be a variety changeover, etc. So now, hopefully, you guys got some context of the use case, and then how we use SiteWise in the cloud and the modeling piece, and then and how are we reporting on it to drive valuable or actionable insights, right? So now we will move to the demo. All right, guys. So I have here the AWS console open, and the SiteWise link. So we go to Amazon AWS IoT SiteWise. On the left, the hamburger pane, you'll see the gateways. I mean, the version we are using, I mean, you have two flavors now. The SiteWise that can be deployed on an edge device, or it could be a virtual Dockerized container as a service that you can deploy on a VM in a data center. So the version we have on our shop floors is we have individual gateways at each of our sites. So we have around 9 sites: Grinnell, Waterman, Farmer City. These are all different states of the country. And so we provisioned and the provisioning is very simple, just as it was promised, pluggable and playable. We just had to plug this device on a PCN network. Obviously, the network team has to do some configuration with firewalls and DMZ so that the gateway, is not exposing or is not exposed to the World Wide Web in a blatant manner. But so we took those security precautions to ensure and provision it in a way which was secure. And so if you look at one of the configurations quickly, the gateway is talking, you have to configure that OPC endpoint. And so you provide that OPC endpoint. You also specify, you can specify individual tags that you're interested in. But since we were capturing quite a few tags, so this wildcard, the asterisk helps, because what it's really saying is go on to this topic of the OPC, and monitor all the tags that are underneath it. So in our case, it would be OE underscore, you'll have line 1, line 2, line 3, and so on and so forth. So this is the gateway configuration, again, very simple. And then moving on to the models and the hierarchies. I'll spend just quick few seconds on this. We already saw in the screenshots, so you can define your area, your lines, your machines, your site. So like I said in the beginning, we modeled it as it were on our shop floor, and you define your various measurements. You can define your metrics. You can define the transforms, like those downtime codes I showed you. And that's the modeling piece. And then coming down to the virtual representation of your physical assets is where it is here. So we have 9 sites. So we define the site, we define the lines, the conditioning, the husk sort, the packaging line, the shelling line, the treating lines, and underneath each of those we have individual lines. Again, underneath those lines we have the individual machineries, the color sorter and the cleaners. So what this allows is for the flexibility. It's almost like a template that you can define. So if we have a corn site, so for corn, most of the processing is the same. The machineries are the same. So we can define a template for one site, and it can be applied to all our 9 sites or 20 sites or how many sites we have across the world. Same thing, you can apply this for a crop protection site, a chemical plant, for example, or another row crop site, for example, a soy site. So that was where the power came in for us. Was we realized that a templating engine or a template model would make a lot of sense, and it made it easier for our let's say automation engineers to go in here and define their measurements and transforms one time, and then tomorrow if a new, let's say, a site wants to be onboarded, we exactly follow the same template and we start configuring the OPC tags, and you would have the data flowing in no time and the metrics being reported, because the metrics, the transforms are all the same and standard across all our sites. So that's how that's one thing that was really powerful from a SiteWise product perspective. And how we use it on the reporting side is we built our dashboard, and again, it's the same replication or representation of the model that exists in the cloud. So in our reports also we have the same hierarchy. We have 9 sites, and if I were to open Boon, we have all the lines, the treating, the shelling, I mean the areas: treatment, shelling, packaging, husk sort, conditioning. The default report opens up to a site overview where you can see the different metrics. Right now, at this time, the sites are not fully operational because, as you know, it's a seasonal thing, and some packaging is going on. But we are about to start harvest in a month or so, where every area will be fully operational and a lot of data will be visible. So a quick example of packaging, the various kind of reports we built. If you look at the area overview, it gives you a little, I mean, like right now, like I said, packaging is going on, so you only see some packaging. But having visibility in these sort of metrics is very key. I mean, as you can see, the power, we stood up sites in let's say less than a week, or half a week. And it was so powerful because now scaling becomes very easy. It's already robust, and the reports have to be built only once, and that way you are driving standardization across the company. And so if you wanted to look at the bagging line, let's say OEE by chart, I mean, this is where the key metric is. And let me collapse that a little bit. And so the key numbers are OEE, but along with that, we also track quality. So again, these are metrics that maybe that are very industry specific. And for you, quality could be a different formula than for us. So, but the essential part here is that having the visibility into these sort of KPIs is paramount, so that you can start analyzing, you can start looking at where are things going wrong or where can we improvise. So these are the and so the power using this API, let's say paradigm or model is again is very powerful, because now multiple teams or multiple groups can start reporting on this data however they wanted to. So now you're not relying on just one group to build these dashboards. Now again, it's become scalable from a reporting standpoint or building dashboards standpoint. So all in all, I mean, it was it was a good value proposition for us to collect data from using SiteWise, having SiteWise doing the heavy lifting, while we focus on the reporting side, which is what the business users were interested in. So having seen or having a glimpse of how we build the reports and how we were using these insights to drive some decisions, I wanted to really then take it to the next step and see what else can we do, because as we all know, in today's day and age, we are thinking about immersive experiences. We are thinking about how we can be on the shop floor without being on the shop floor, for example. This whole concept of lean manufacturing. So our current efforts is, one, we are already using SiteWise in production, and this harvest will be our second round of usage. And so as anything, there were some hiccups in the beginning or with the first release or first usage. So we have since corrected that, and we are hoping for a much more robust data reporting this time around. And so now it's a time to look at what else can we do. And so uh, what we are thinking of doing, or we are involved in, is using the same SiteWise data as opposed to putting on a dashboard. Maybe put it on a lens or a smart glass, right? And how do we use that? So there has been talks around, if you may have heard of connected worker, right? What does that really mean? Having data accessible as you're, let's say, on the shop floor, and being able to, let's say, take some actions based on what you see. So so we said, well, we already have the data in SiteWise. Now let's partner with someone who can implement this on a smart glass, and then that becomes our, let's say, use case for Gemba walks. I'm not sure if how many of you guys are familiar with Gemba walks, but that's a lean manufacturing term from Toyota, where what we're talking about is being at on the shop floor, but without being there, right? Especially with this COVID times, it has become even more paramount with the social distancing and et cetera, where we are very limited workforce is on the shop floor, but we still want visibility as to what's going on, so that again, we can be in constant touch and try to improvise. So the idea then becomes is we have the first part on the top. We are already connected to the OPC. We're collecting the data from SiteWise. We're pushing into the cloud, and we are reporting dashboards. So the idea then would be putting QR codes on each of these machineries. We already have mapped those machineries. We already know the metrics and the measurements that are being recorded for that equipment. So at this point, when you're wearing a smart glass, you're looking at scan the QR code. It goes up to SiteWise, fetches the data, the key metrics that we're interested in displaying, and it shows up on your lens. At the same time, it shows the same data could also show up on a dashboard on the remote side. So what that allows is these, like I said, these Gemba walks, or let's say check-ins on a daily basis, where you're not having to wait for a weekly status meeting for across all 9 sites, right, to report on what went well, what didn't go. This is more real time, more interactive. You can observe, you can get to see the data as opposed to looking at some sort of stale report that was generated early in the morning or the previous night. So this is the value. Again, this is a sort of a test and learn pilot. We think that there is value. I mean, we read about all these, or we hear about all these concepts and theories of augmented reality and virtual reality. And what I want to do is try to put it in implementation and really give it to the workers and see how valuable this is. So that's what we are doing next. The next two, again, harvest is starting in a month, so it'll be perfect time by October when we should be ready with this implementation, and I'll be sharing my results. And so with that, that's my story. That's our journey at Crop Science. So thank you, and I'll hand it over back to Saras.
Hey, thank you so much, Perry. That was super helpful, and I'm sure our viewers found it really interesting to see how you've used SiteWise to improve and report on the performance of your crop processing. And finally, I would want to call out how you can get started. You can go to the AWS console and navigate to the SiteWise console, where you can spin up a wind farm demo similar to what I was talking about earlier to see what SiteWise can do for you. And then we also have a quick start kit for connected factories available. The link is in the deck, where we've partnered with independent software vendors and hardware vendors to give you a package solution to get your connected factory journey going. So you can find these links in the deck, and see you next time. Thank you.